welcome to another video by View Systems. In this video, we're going to build a basic web browser using 4D. Now, under Forms, after you've opened your 4D, go to Project Forms and create a new form. So here I've already done so, called Web Browser. And once you've done so, you should see something like this. Now, to create a basic web browser, 4D uses something called Web Area. And see this little puzzle piece here on the side menu. If you click on it, you will be able to see a web area and drag it along here. Now, web areas can display various types of web content within your forms. The first thing we're going to do is right-click on the web area and go to Property List. And here we are going to actually use Form Objects. So here I'm just going to make the object name into web area, and the form will be form.webArea. And now that is our form object. Now when you think of a typical basic web browser, usually the user will need to enter a URL. So we are just going to enter a variable field here. And then we're going to right click on it, go to the property list. We're going to call the object name URL, and then same thing as we did before, we're going to call it form.url. And now we're going to add a object method to actually make this functionable. So now we have here some code, case of if the form event has any data change. So when the user is entering a URL, for example, open that specific URL within that web area. So 4D uses a WA-open URL command, and here we see the star as a operator, the object, and the string of the URL itself. And then we end the case, and that is all we really need to do there for a basic URL command. Now before we test our simple URL, let's make sure everything in our property list is properly checked off. So we definitely want to make sure that this is enterable. We do not want multi-line entries. And we also want to double check that onDataChange is actually checked off, or else it will not work since we have used onDataChange in the object method. Now that we have checked that, we are going to run our form. And right now we just see nothing, but what if we type in a website? We should see the apple.com show up in our web area that we had just displayed. So great, that seems to work. But what are we missing here? We are missing simple things like a back and a forward button, potentially a history button, and those are just a few examples of what I'm going to show you here today. And in the next video, we will show you a more technical side of what you can do with the web area itself, like using JavaScript code within 4D and vice versa. But for now, let's just stick with the basics. So now I'm going to add a forward and back button. So I personally just add little invisible buttons, and then you can add a particular icon that you would like on top of it to make it look more so like a web browser. So before I add the icons, I'm just going to show you some of the code that I have put in here. For the back URL, we kind of use a similar concept as we saw for the URL object method, except here we are going to use the form event onClicked. And here we have another 4D web area command called WA-openBackURL, which kind of has the same kind of parameters except without the URL. So we have the operator and the form object. A very similar concept with the forward URL, except here we are using the open forward URL command. Except here we are using the open forward URL command. Now that I've added the forward and back buttons, I've just added simple little icons here as well. We are going to do another test. Now let's go back to maybe apple.com as an example. So let's pretend now that we are using this as a normal user. So if we went to the iPhone page, maybe the Apple TV, and let's say we wanted to go back to the iPhone page without having to click iPhone here, but we just want to use the back button. So if we do so that, it takes us right back to the iPhone page. If we go back again, it should take us to the home page. And what about the forward button? That should now take us back to the iPhone page, which it did. And one more time to the Apple TV, which here we see that again. So great, our forward and back buttons seem to be working well. Now what if we had a little history up feature where we could see a history of all the websites that we were on? So let's quickly build that as well. Now here I've added a 3D button, which is also a drop-down menu, as we see the little black arrow here. And if we go to the property list, all I've really done is just label the title as a history menu, just so I keep track of what that was. And now let's go to the object method. The web area documentation on 4D.com has all of the particular commands that you can use within the web area, and they've made them quite easy to use and self-explanatory. So here we have some similar commands that we've already seen, like open back URL. Some new ones here are web area create URL history menu, which is the purpose of this particular button. You can also make it dynamically pop up menu, and so on. So let's give this a try. I'm just going to do a quick design on this history so it matches my buttons. I'm also going to add a quick exit button as well if they wanted to exit the web browser within 4D. And now let's give this another test. Let's say we are going to apple.com. And let's say we wanted to go to Google. Or another website like, let's say Pinterest. And if we go under the History tab, we should see Google and Apple appear because those were the two websites that we were at prior. And if we just go to Exit, that will exit out of our web browser in 4D. And that is part one of how to build a very basic web browser. And obviously you can make this a bit more appealing to the eye by adding a bit more design and making it look more so like a web browser as you would see today. And you can do so much with that in 4D. And we really hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one.